What's going on, guys, and a big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta, and today we're back with D-Boy. We are back on doing deck profiles, and this time we'll talk about deck profile that is kind of magical, but we're talking about Bruce. So the great for Bruce. When it comes to Bruce and playing Bruce in a big event, so we have, of course, the World qualifiers coming up, and people ask me, oh D-Boy, what is the deck that you will be playing? If I would play Overdress as a format, because I'm more into V and Premium, but if I would play Overdress as a format, then I would play Bruce. You have different versions of Bruce. You have, of course, Diablo's Vehemence Bruce, you have Violence Bruce, and you have Unrivaled Bruce. Of course, Unrivaled plays Violence. Vehemence Bruce is good as well, but it will be better with the upcoming support from set 13. So the deck will have more multi-attack, it will have extra or more into it. But when it comes to right now, in my opinion, Unrivaled Bruce is the better build and the strongest build. It hits hard, it hits fast, well, fast-ish, but it's just amazingly strong. In this video, we'll actually talk about the deck a little bit, because the deck did get a little bit of an upgrade. We'll talk also about the extra cards that you could add to the deck, and we also, of course, have the upcoming promo that could also change things. But all in all, let's talk about the deck. So without further ado, let's jump into the deck profile. Alright, so now we jump into the actual deck profile. So we start with the right line, right? So Simple Bruce, Unrivaled Bruce, of course, plays a starter. And you can play whatever starter you like, at least if it's an SP, would be more amazing. You could choose, you could play Math because it fits the right line, as in all of them are borderless. Or you could play the Chaos one, or you could play the Desire Devil one. It's pretty much up to you, you can play whatever. For me, I switch between these two depending on I'm the mood for what. Normally, this is the one that I use the most, but hey, it could be a different one every game. For the great one, of course, you play the Bolo's Bad Steve. So Steve has the ability that when it rides, you can soul charge one, or you can call this and then soul charge one. So basically, you call your starter, you soul charge a random card from the top of your deck. If this card is on the field, then it gets a continuous plus 5k in your turn if you have Final Rush, or in your opponent's turn if you have Final Rush as well, which works with the Vehemence Bruce, of course. Then you go into Richard. Richard, basically, when you ride it, you could put a Vanguard into your soul, most of the time your starter, and then you draw a card. If it's on the regular circle, it gets plus 5k. And last but not least, of course, you have your Bruce. Bruce comes in two beautiful versions. You can play whatever you like. This one fits the right line more. If you play this, play Matt. But of course, I like to play this alternative art, as I like this one more. And this is basically your right line. There is a difference between both Bruces, as in their skill. This Bruce, on attack, you soul plus 5 to restand 2 of your front row Vanguards, which is a skill that you could acquire if you have Final Rush. And you get Final Rush at the start of your turn, even before you draw. Then you have Diablo's Unrivaled Bruce. Unrivaled Bruce has the ability with a Counter Blast of 1 and a Soul Blast of 5. You restand all of your front row units. And then he gets drive check -2. So the first time he has 3 drive checks, and then he has 1, which means 4 drive checks in one turn. So the difference between these two is that this one restands the Vanguard as well, but he costs the Counter Blast. This one costs only the Soul, and he doesn't need the CB. So you're normally your right line, you ride, and whenever you get into this, you soul charge 1, and then you get into that, and then you ride this on top of him. You will not have Final Rush, of course, on the first turn, so the first grade 3 turn is vanilla. Even with the new promo, it would still be vanilla. And then the turn after that, you will require Final Rush before you draw and before you ride. And then you ride into this, you will still be in Final Rush. And now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 soul, so you're set to go. And that's basically how you require your first 5 soul, which is just by riding. Alright, now we get to the main deck. The main deck, of course, needs to play the 4 copies of the Unrivaled Bruce. So you have the chance to get him to your hand and, of course, ride. Because you want to ride into this. If you do not, then the deck would work, but work less good, because this deck is made so that you ride into the Unrivaled Bruce. Alright, if we get the promo, which we'll get in the future, it will be easier to get Bruce. And if you go first, then you will be able to go into Bruce grade 4, which you will get the triple drive. But it doesn't really matter because you don't have the ability to get the Final Rush yet. But again, you will have at least a triple drive, which is good. So for now, we play the 4 of these. I already explained his skill, so hey, he gives you Final Rush and he gives you the ability to restand your front row with the Vanguard, and they can get drive check -1. There is one new card that the deck adds, which is one of the Regalia pieces. This Regalia piece gets you the abilities to search your deck or drop zone for up to a grade 3, 2 the grade 3s, different names, or a grade 3 and a grade 4, pretty much up to you. The grade 4s will go to your hand and the grade 3s will go on the field. So this card basically gets you whatever you need. You need your Maruris, you need your Bryans, you could get a Maruri and a Bryan to the field, or you could just basically have a Bruce. Just get a Bruce to the field. To your hand, which is good to go. If you already have a Bruce in your hand, then you could actually call to whatever grade 3s that you need for next turn. So it's a very, very, very effective card in the deck, and you activate it on the first turn, you go to grade 3 because you don't have Final Rush yet. So yeah, I think this is a card, if you open it, like you have it in your starting hand, it could help you a lot with making the right field. The next order card that we play, as you guys already know, I'm a big fan of Hell Dive. I call it Hell Dive, the real name is Hellblast Full Dive. Hellblast Full Dive right here is just a counterblast of 1. If you have Final Rush, you get the ability to draw a card, give your 3 of your units in the front row, or all of your units in the front row, which are 3, a plus 10k. So it's just basic, you just draw a card, call a card from your hand, and give your front row plus 10k. That's it. There is, of course, other options that you could play in this deck. There are the other order cards. If you want to talk about them, then I have a video made that only talks about those. I will put the link in the description section below for you guys so you can see the differences between the two and why I chose for this one. But for my playstyle, this fits perfectly. So yeah, for Hell Dive. For the grade 3 lineup, we play 4 copies of Maruri, an amazing card that does basically everything you need it to do in this deck. It becomes a powerhouse, it draws you a card, and it gives you a soul of 2. So she by herself is just perfect. A perfect card that is amazing. So yeah, I play 4 copies of her. She has also alternative art, and if you want to play that, you could, but it comes in a double rare foiling, so yeah, that's why I rather play the SP. But if that one will be out in SP, then I'll play 2 on 2. Then we have 4 copies of Bryan. You could choose to play 2 if you want to, or 3. I love 4 because Bryan is just too good. Sometimes I do activate him 3 times in 1 turn. I've never got the chance to activate him 4 times in 1 turn. That's a Soul Blast of 8, that's a lot. But a Soul Blast of 6 I could sometimes afford. It's an amazing card and it does a lot for the deck. Basically, it's a Soul Blast of 2. Until the end of turn, you give your front row extra 5k. If you're on Final Rush, you also get to give your Vanguard an extra crit. Because your Vanguard already restands, it means that he attacks twice. It means that the crits will be really heavy. And the extra 5k that he gives to the front row is kind of a 10k. because they restand. The same with the order. Playing the order in the turn makes your attacks way more strong because it gives the front row extra 10k, which means 30k, 60k because all of them restand. But this is the card why you want to ride into Unrivaled Bruce because he gives the Vanguard the crits. This next to an overtrigger is just overkill. Next we have a card that is called Diabolo's Diver Julian. We will not talk about Julian yet, we will put him right here, but we will come back to him. First we will talk about Derek. 4 copies of Derek. Something that's not a lot of people agree with me on, but again, this is the way that I play the deck. Derek is very interesting, as he gives you field control. He could be an attacker, but most of the time, it's all about field control. So, his first ability, if you're on Final Rush, he gets extra 5k power. That's it. Then, the second ability is once per turn. You count +1, you put one of your regards into your soul. It could be himself. You choose and retire one of your opponent's regards for every 4 cards you have in your soul. That's it. That's the first part of the ability. Then, if you are in Final Rush, then you also get the chance to look at the top cards of your deck, the same amount of open rearguard your opponent has. And then you put them at your soul or call them to the field. Which means, let's say that your opponent has 1 open rearguard circle. You call this, you have 4 or 5 cards in your soul, or 6. It's almost never 8, but it could happen sometimes. Then he gets the chance to retire one of your opponent's rearguards. So now he has 2 open rearguard circles. You check the top 2 and you could call them or put them into your soul. This card fixes your soul, fixes your field. Now we've talked about Derek. Now we go back to Julian. Julian is kind of a mix between a Derek and a Marjorie. He's an attacker. Derek is less of an attacker. And he fixes your soul and he could call. So he's actually kind of a mix between these two. That's why you play 2. So he could be the 5th and 6th Derek or the 5th and 6th Marjorie. And this is something that gives the deck actually lots of balance. Alright, so Julian, what's his skill? Julian's skill is interesting and strange a little bit. His once per turn ability is an auto ability, of course on Vanguard. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, he needs to attack a Vanguard, which is a downside, because if this attacks a Vanguard, the skill would work, it would make him better, which I will explain later. But you attack the Vanguard, you count +1. And then this unit gets an extra 2k for every card you have in your damage zone, which is good. Then, if you have 2 or more cards in your damage zone, you will soul charge for every 2 of them. So if you have 2 or 3, you soul charge 1. If you have 4 or 5 or 6, you soul charge 2. And then, if you're on Final Rush, or if you have a Bruce Vanguard, this card actually doesn't require you to have Final Rush. You only need a Bruce Vanguard. If you have a Bruce Vanguard, you get the chance to soul charge, and then you could call from your soul up to the same amount that you have soul charged. So it's pretty good. He basically could call you 2 cards. He gets 10k if you have 5 damage, which becomes again an attacker. The only problem with him is he calls to an open rearguard circle, so he could not make more attacks. He could, if you could open rearguard circles in the front row. So that's it for Julian. Then we add one of the beautiful ladies. Well, this card could change into something different if you want it to be, which I will show you the other options later. So we'll put this right here, talk about the skill later. First, we finish the essential cards. For perfect guards, of course, I play the old school SPPG because in my eyes, it's the more beautiful version than the other one. But hey, you could play whatever you like. And of course, we could not play Order PG because we ourselves play the Great 4 Bruce. Alright, then we have 2 Doggos and 1 Lady. Before we get into triggers, these are the cards that I add into the deck. Alright, what are the other options that you could play? You could play her. You could play the Shield Boy. You could play the Countercharge Boy. You could play this card, which is interesting as well. I will explain. and you can play this boy. There are all other options that you could add to the deck, of course, but in this build, these are the cards that would be the best. Let's first start about Rock Boy, Prick Boy. Prick Boy is interesting. His skill is basically an auto ability. When this card is put from your Vanguard into your soul, if your damage zone has 4 or more face down cards, you bind this card and you countercharge 1, which means he is just a countercharger. If you start your turn with only 1 damage, you could still activate the order to give your front row the extra power, call and draw, and then you could call this to the field. You could soul charge him with a Marjorie, and he could give you the counter charge. The problem is, or actually there are 2 problems. The card is very situational, as you need to have 4 face down damage. So if you have 3 damage, it would not work. If you have 4 damage, 2 of them are face up, then you need to use cards like Julian or cards like Derek to get rid of them. To get rid of those face up damage if you want to counter charge with his ability. But that's not all. He also will bind himself from your soul, so he will actually minus you a soul again. Now, if he could give you the soul charge back by a card from your drop zone or whatever, then you're good to go, the same as what she does. But he actually doesn't, which means minusing yourself a soul and being situational that you need to have the 4 face down damage or to have 4 damage is interesting. So I have tried him. He is good as a 1 or a 2 off, but I would rather still not play him and then just countercharge by healing. This is another card that is also very interesting. It's a promo card. His name is Warren. He has the ability, also an auto ability. When this unit attacks, if you are in Final Rush, you counter +1, you soul charge 1, you choose one of your units, it gets in plus 10k until the end of turn. So he basically could give whatever unit you have extra 10k. Now he costs a counterblast, so that's a little bit too much, which will mean we'd not play him. There are other grade 3s, Diabolos grade 3s, that are also interesting. Some of them attack the whole front row, some of them do shenanigans, some of them just get power, becomes a powerhouse. But again, in this deck, you already have everything you need. Then there is this dragon. This dragon has also a very interesting ability, as his soul charging is not from your deck, but from the drop zone. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you played a normal order this turn, you count +1, you choose one of 2 normal units from your drop, and then you put them into your soul. This unit gets plus 5k until the end of battle. So there are good and bad things. The good things is that he soul charges from your drop zone, which is good because sometimes you don't have enough deck left. The bad thing is you need to play in order. He costs a counterblast, and his power is until the end of battle. So yeah, it's an interesting card, but you would not play it. We have our Shield Boy, and we have the Lady. First of all, thanks Flores, thanks Blazing Paladin for this amazing, beautiful gift. I love this card, as in the art, as in the way she laughed, and as in the foiling on her. It's really a very, very, very beautiful card. I've tested this card in this deck, and actually I did use it a lot, the first ability, because the second ability you could not really play in this deck because you do not persona right. But the first ability is good. It's just when you discard her for your riding, you Soul Blast 1, you put her into the bottom of your deck and you draw a card. The put her in the bottom of the deck is good because you have less chance to deck out. Drawing is of course good and it helps in the early game. The bad thing is she does cost you soul, which means that when you go into your grade 4 Bruce, you will have less soul. And then you will say, boy, but you get a card back. But yeah, it's situational. You do need to have her in your beginning, your starting hand. Otherwise, she would do nothing. She's not a good Vanguard. She does nothing except being discarded. That's it. And then, of course, she goes back, so you will see her again. But the problem with this card is actually very simple. So let's say for an example, I will explain it right away. So let's say for an example that you have your right deck, right? So your right, and he gives you an extra soul charge, which let's say bad luck, you get a PG in your soul, and then you reach your grade 4 turn, so you get final rush, and then you get the chance to ride, and then you ride into your Unrivaled Bruce, right? Let's see, where is Unrivaled boy? He's here. So you have your Unrivaled Bruce. But let's say you have activated this order before, or you have them in your hand, and you call a Brian and a Marjorie to your front, to your back row, right? So then you ride into this, you move these to the front row. If you have used this lady in your right faces before this turn, of course, then you will have one less soul. So let's say you have soul blasted your starter, right? So you have one less soul. What's the issue? The issue is that now you have only 4 soul, which means that next to Mayuri, you actually need another soul charger. Because if you activate the skill of Brian to soul blast 2, and then you attack with the Mayuri to soul charge 2 again, then you will still have 4 soul. But if you haven't used her and you have the extra card in your soul, which could be, again, whatever, so let's put the starter back, then you're already sitting on 5 soul, which means you could have whatever booster chilling behind this. It could be just a trigger or whatever, let's say an over trigger. Then you attack with this, and then you attack with her, and then you use her skill to soul charge, and you have used his skill to soul blast 2. She will give you the soul blast back. So it's very, very balanced if you have the F5 soul that you got from your right line. If you want to still play her, it's pretty much up to you. I guess as a one-off, she's good. And with the testing that I have done, I do see her a lot. But as I said, it's just that losing that 1 soul, I didn't think that it would be that effective, but it actually is. So effectively bad. So I would rather not play her in this deck. What are the other options that that you could play? So let's go back. So we have these, right? Doggos are very good. They are very good because boosting with them, they could go to soul, they could give one of your unit the extra 10k, which is effective because it's a double 10k. But it's all about that extra soul that you sometimes need. Sometimes you finish your turn with no soul, then you have a Marjorie and a Julian, or Marjorie and a Derek, and most of the time they could give you 2 soul, but they could not give you 3 soul. So 2 on 2 is 4, and then you need a Doper or a crit from your hand to get that extra soul. So Doper is very, very effective. You have Neil, which is your shield boy, is also very good. I played this card a lot at 1 or 2. Very good, especially in the multi-attacking format. It could be very effective. If you have Vanguard with Bruce in its card name, and you have taken a damage this turn, then this gets plus 15k shield, which means it's a 20k shield. It's the same as a front trigger, and that's a lot of shield. So you could use this card at least as a one-off. It's good. Alright, so we would rather leave Doggo in the deck. And then we have the last card that we could add to the deck. It could be this, it could be her, it could be still this if you really want to. Again, it's up to you. The reason why I play this lady is simple. First of all, it's a beautiful card and I really want to play it. Second of all, it is situational, but in a good way. Most of your soul chargers in this deck cost counterblast. Especially the ones that soul charge more than just themselves. Because Doper and the crit will only soul charge themselves. So you would say, okay, D-boy, but this actually costs a soul blast, right? Yes. And you need to activate a normal order that turn. Also yes. But she gets the chance to look at the top 5 cards from your deck and choose and reveal one card from them and put it into your hand. Which basically means that if you don't have your Marjories, you could just activate the order. You could call this, and then she could give you the Marjorie. The only downside to that whole strategy is that you've already activated the order. So you already need your attackers. So she, most of the time, is not the one that he searches your Marjories, but she's most of the time the one that searches your Bryans, that searches your Dopers, that searches the cards that you will have in the back row. And that's something that makes her a little bit less effective. But there's also another turn that you could place this card. And that's of course the turn that you play your Regalia piece. Because Regalia piece is still a normal order. And this is a card that you could still call in the early game during your grade 3, which is something that I actually really like. So when you go into grade 3, if you have your Regalia piece and you activate it, and then you call this card, you Soul Blast 1, and then you could search whatever from your top 5 and add it to your hand. But again, it is a very, very, very situational card. So you could still take it out to play whatever. My personal favorite would still be this guy. But it's a card that I switch around. So it could be her, it could still be this card, and it could be whatever. When we will get the promos, this, of course, both of them will be out. And the promo will go in, and we will play less Dopers maybe. But it's important to have the promo in here. We could play less Bruce if we want, because the promo could fix that whole riding into Bruce. You could pretty much play just 2 Bruces, and then take these 2 out, and then play 2 or 3 or 4 promos. Basically, I would play 4 promos. 4 promos, and then just the 2 Bruce would be the way, in my eyes. But hey, pretty much up to you. Alright guys, that is actually it for the normal units. Now we get into the triggers before we end this deck profile. First we play 4 copies of the front trigger. Normally I play 4, now I play 3. Why? Because I want to have more crits in here, and I don't play draws in this deck because this deck does deck out. So 3 fronts, something that you want to see in the late game, but you do not want to see in the early game. It's a very effective card as in the shield value, but the crits in this deck are better. Of course, especially in the early game, because you want to put them on 2 or 3 damage. For the heals, you could play whatever heal you like. First of all, the art, you could choose between 2, in my opinion. You could choose between Oriana or the demonic one. I like this one because she doesn't have shield and the art is really good. But I think I will switch back to Oriana. As I said, I switch between these 2. You can sneeze if you want, it's okay. Sneezing is fine, it's good for you. Lana chilling in the background. Alright, so we have other heal options. We have the crit heal, we have the restand heal, we have the your opponent is on higher grade heal. There are good things and bad things about these heals. The good thing is that of course they have more shield value as they become 25k shield. But they are situational because it depends on what deck you play against. Some of the decks do not have a restand, some of the decks do not get an extra crit, and some of the decks are not on a higher grade. Especially if you are already playing a deck that is on higher grade. So this would only be effective in the early game. And late game it's just a 10k. So I would rather not play this. But I could play these. Again, depending on the format. I still rather play the 15k shield. Why? Because this in the early game is just an no pass or an over trigger to pass. And I find that actually very, very good. In this deck you also don't have 10ks. So you see yourself actually guarding with a 15k a lot as just a 10k shield. And of course, the beautiful art. This is also art that I like a lot. This one a little bit less. These 3 are my favorites when it comes to heals in Overdress. I think I'll switch back to Oriana for now. But again, it could be whatever. It's really up to the format that you're playing is and how your locals are like. Then we go to crits. Of course, we play Bazooka Meisje, as Meisje means lady in Dutch, or girl, more girl than a lady. It's interesting that I always have called her Bazooka Meisje because she's not even holding a bazooka, she's holding a rocket launcher. But that's her name and she's okay with that. There's a beautiful scene on the anime when Dunji reaches out to her hand and it looks like a demonic hand, but actually it's just her hand because she's wearing a glove. But if you haven't seen that, you can see it. It's from the first few episodes. I think the second or maybe even the first episode. It's an amazing scene. Next crit that we play is the one that goes to soul. So yeah, you could play other crits if you want. Pretty much up to you depending on the art. But this actually is very, very, very effective in this deck. First, I didn't play it because it's just a 4K and normally I do boost my Mariori's or Grey 3 sometimes with these. But it's all about getting that last soul as what Doper does. So when you play 4 of these, you could actually afford to take out Doper and put whatever you like in this deck. And because we are putting the promo soon, whatever, when it comes out, then this is essential to have in the deck. Last but not least is of course your Overtrigger, your OT. In this deck you actually play the Dark State OT and nothing else. Why? Very simple. Because you have a resending Vanguard. That's it. I don't need to explain more. Which art you want to play, pretty much up to you. I play this in Vehemence Bruce before, now I play Red OT, and this one in Dunji's deck, because Unrivaled Bruce needs to play the original one. But again, it's up to you. You can play whatever you like. And that's actually it for the deck profile. Now, as I said, there are 3 flexible cards, which are the 2 dopers, and in this case, one of these ladies or the Shield Boy. Let me know in the comment section below if you have played this build or not. If you haven't, try it out. It's very, very, very balanced and very, very good. But you do need to play the right build. If you take these out, then you see that you're missing the soul. If you play this, then you see that you're needing the soul. So you play her, play this. You could take this one out, it's okay, and then just play the 1 copy, but leave the dopers in. If you take your dopers out, then don't play this, because you will need that 1 soul, and that 1 soul will hurt. So don't play soul blasters at all in this build, because you do not soul charge that much. Alright, thank you all for watching. Thank you for tuning in on our channel. If you want to know more, if you want to have explanation about some cards, let me know in the comment section below. I will be more than happy to explain it to you guys. If there are some cards that I didn't explain, like Doper for an example, I'm assuming that you guys know these, because just on boost it goes into your soul, you give one of your units extra 10k, so he's an 18k that he gives on power, but becomes 28 because again you have something that could restand. So 8k from the boost, 10k once, 10k twice, 28k, which is a lot. It's a huge attack boosting that you could have on your turn. And the other cards, I think I explained most of them, so you guys are good to go. Thanks for watching. Until next time.